Welcome back to the Your Golf Performance Podcast. We've got a special one today. Ryan Smith, he's the head coach of the National Player Development Program at Sea Island in Georgia, United States. I got sent this podcast that he was on a couple months back by a good friend, Gavin Sutherland, and he was on the Golf Gurus podcast. And I've listened to that about 3 times now, and it was phenomenal. And I've pestered him now long enough that he's finally agreed to come on for a chat. Ryan, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, happy to be here. This is going to be fun.
Yeah. Look, what I think we should start with before we get into all the nitty gritty of, about what you do and the phenomenal job that you're doing, can we just go back? Let's talk a little bit about your, early days into golf. Did you play college golf? Did you play professionally? And then we'll get on to a little bit about your, mentors as coaches and that.
Yeah, sure. So, I started playing golf as just a summer sport when I was young. I was born in the northeastern United States, which is generally like a colder climate. And so I played baseball and basketball and hockey and football and all the other sports. And then in 1997, Tiger Woods won the Masters. And I thought it was the coolest thing I've ever seen because it reminded me of a real sport with the fist pumps and the energy and just the things he was doing. Yep. It didn't look like the rest of the tour, and it looked more like an athlete out there. So I thought that was really quite unique. And I remember going to my dad and saying, I quit all my other sports. I want to play golf full time. And he was like, great, because he knew I was not going to be like 6'6", 225 and play for our favorite hockey team. So that was really when the switch sort of flipped for me. And I would say, we didn't have the means to take a ton of lessons, but I read every book I could get my hands on, all the magazines. This is well before social media. So I'd have to wait each month for the new tip from Jim McLean or David Ledbetter or whatever to come out. And I went to the library, would read a lot of books, and I would just tinker on my own. And I got pretty good. And my dad was good enough to get me just a few lessons with a guy who had he was a PGA member, but he really focused on the fundamentals and a lot of the smaller points. And it was boring to me at the time in those lessons. I would ask my dad, why am I working on my grip for an hour? I'm ready for the next thing. Right. So I had a good foundation. I was lucky in a lot of ways and went on to play high school golf and a little bit of college golf. And then I turned professional and probably stayed professional maybe a few too many years. The story I tell when I knew is pretty much over. I was playing a practice round for a mini tour here in the southeastern United States called the eGolf Tour.
Yep.
And I got paired with a young man named Tony Finau for the practice round. And, it's a dog leg right. It's like 235 to the end of the fairway. You should hit 3-iron, 9-iron to this green. And he hits driver over the trees, over the corner, over the back of the green. And I was just thinking wow, that was different. And then, we make our way around the course for 18 holes. And, of course we weren't keeping score because it was a practice round, but I felt like if we were keeping score, we would have shot something similar, but it didn't look anything like what I was doing.
Yeah.
And
right.
I remember my coach and saying hey man, if I need to figure this out because what I just witnessed, if that's what I'm up against at the next level, I don't think I'm going to fare very well. And then I probably stuck at it out for another few years, and it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of great stories and travel and met a lot of great people. And then I had to make a decision. I actually, when I kind of quit playing full time, I didn't have really a backup plan. So my parents own a furniture company, like a small furniture company. And they were basically like, okay, well, you can't work for us, but we can get you a job in the furniture business. And I just envisioned myself selling chairs, although I would have made more money in 1 year than I did probably my professional career doing sales. I just didn't see that as the route that I wanted to go. So I called my then swing coach or kind of ex-swing coach, asked him, what should I do? I want to stay in the golf business, I think. And he was like, are you sure? And I was like, well, I don't really know anything else. And he was like, well, come hang out with me for like a summer. We'll teach some golf. You'll shadow me a bunch and we'll kind of go from there. And at that point, the PGA of America had just bought PGA Junior League. It was like one of
Mm.
their first acquisitions. It really hadn't gotten going at all. And we had started one that summer. And I was driving around like the Ryder Cup captain, man. And I just had so much fun coaching because I couldn't teach yet, right? Because I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
But I felt like I could coach the game a little bit. And I just had so much fun that summer. And I just remember saying, like, okay, this is what I want to do. I think I can make a go at this. And so I did. I entered in for PJ apprenticeship and went through that program, and that's kind of where I got started.
I always find it funny when I speak to whether it's a PGA Tour player or a successful coach, and they're around our era. I'd say you're a bit younger than me, but like, you know, we all waited for that Golf Digest magazine and we went to the back where the instruction was. And, you know, I was always, what is Butch saying this month? Or like what you just said there, McLean or Ledbetter. And I think we were all just obsessed about golf, right? And it was, I'd finish at 3 o'clock at school and I was at the golf course at 3:10. And, nearly every single afternoon, that was what I did. Saturdays, I was there 12 hours. And I think it's funny you see, like I didn't realize it at the time, but me being obsessed with the golf swing or, whatever it was in there, you don't realize that 20 years later or 15 years later, that's going to be your job, right? And it's just so funny hearing. As soon as you said that, I was just like, yeah, okay, that's what I was like. Now, can we talk about, I guess, who did you learn from as a coach? I have heard Tony Ruggiero, who we've had on here before. I love that guy.
Yes. I mean, the dew sweeper is an absolute legend.
Yeah.
I'm so it started out with that first coach. His name is Rick Murphy. He's based here in the States. He was actually the first person to win the PJ National Junior Leader Award in the 80s. So it became quite obvious to me that he knew a lot about junior golf, and we had some good conversations about it. But him and Jason Sutton were really the guys that I kind of put my mentors into different boxes because they all helped me in completely different ways. So Rick and Jason, although they're very different people and they have different approaches to teaching and coaching, they both instilled in me this like serial learner approach to developing myself as a coach. And they encouraged me to, get certifications and go to teaching summits. They dragged me to Open Forum 1 and Open Forum 2. And, I was exposed to things, pretty early on that I just didn't know existed. And learning from them and then people that they trusted, James Ridyard, a good friend of the Guru, and some other people in that world. I've just really tried to take that mindset of continuous development of my own learning. And they were both great at that. Beyond those two, my business partner, before I was here at Sea Island, Mark Lapointe, he's definitely a mentor of mine. He wouldn't be maybe as well known as Jason or Rick, but he's very much one of the best teachers in the Carolinas. And he likes not being very well known. I think it's part of it's his personality. But one of the things that he instilled with me is being able to read the person and the EQ part of coaching and professionalism and what we do and taking pride in the programs that we run. Those were the things that I got from him in the 6 years I was working with him and then eventually alongside of him. And then outside of my own kind of region, I had really always thought that I was going to be sort of a Chris Como-esque type of coach where I
Yeah.
would be, very, and not to say that I don't use biomechanics or technology, but I was really honed in on that track. I was going to teach tour players. I was going to be the smartest coach in America. Like that was like my path. And honestly, through social media, I was watching a YouTube video on Golf Science Lab. I don't know if you guys get
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Courtney. And he was with Tony at one of their camps or retreats. And I was like, that does not look like anything I've ever been around before. And so I DM'd Tony, and this was, I think, pre-pandemic, so 2018 or 2019, and asked him if he would allow me to shadow him. And you know, Tony being Tony said, "Hell yeah, man! Like, come on down anytime." So I drove down here actually to St. Simon's Island. Tony was at Frederica, which is not too far from where I work now, and I was introduced to this team environment with Colby Wayne, who works with Justin Thomas, and for a while Tiger Woods. I don't know if he still works with him in the physical capabilities from a fitness perspective. And he had a mental coach, and he had a short game guy, and they just all came together with this group of people. And it wasn't even just elite juniors. I mean, that was the core of it, but there was like a 12 handicap over here and a member over there, and just people
Yeah.
who wanted to get better, man. And the environment, the music was going, and Tony would be doing something, and then Kay Wayne would come out of the corner with a band and start pulling on people, and it was just this wonderful chaos that I just was like, man. And Tony was here just a couple of weeks ago, and we've kept in touch. Obviously, he's been a mentor of mine, but I don't think I ever told him how big of an impression that made on me.
Yeah.
Uh, you know what I mean? And we got to talk about that. But so Tony would be a big one, and now recently, I would say one of my biggest mentors would be somebody that I work with closely here in Justin Parsons.
Mm.
Uh, JP is, I, you know, I'm very thankful when I'm elected to be on Golf Digest lists or Golf Magazine lists, and how he's not number one in the country is beyond me, man. I mean, this guy's teaching people to play the best golf of their lives seemingly almost every year. He's resurrecting careers. He's making new ones. The things he's doing with the young Blades Brown, I mean, is wonderful. I don't know if you know Blades. He's a high school player who just turned professional. And yeah, so JP's been a wonderful resource to me while I've been here, along with, we have a great team here as well. So I've been really lucky in that. I mean, Jason Bale, Tim Cook. I mean, it's a long list. I've just been so lucky that so many people have taken an interest in my career. And
Yeah.
it's something that I'm super passionate about for, my assistant. And I'm sending it's funny now, I'm sending my assistant to shadow my mentor so he can kind of see what he likes about different things. And it's just a wonderful part about the industry, I think.
Yeah, I love that. It's on my bucket list to come and hang out with Tony a couple days when he has one of his retreats. I think it'd be cool.
It is cool.
The interesting thing is, like, I just DM'd him randomly a couple years back and said, "Hey, would you come on?" And he's like, "Yeah, for sure." Didn't know me. Come on, we had this great chat, and he's just been, just kind of like a person I feel like I've known for 20 years. And it's like
Yes.
just random text messages back and forth with each other. And then he's like, "Hey, I'll come on again. You want to have another chat?" And we've had another chat. And, he's way too giving of his time. But, that's his personality. I love it.
He doesn't slow down, man. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. All right. Can we, I guess the main event was, getting you on here to talk about your, player development program that you've got. Can you just give the listeners a bit of a, I guess, not a sales pitch, but just let's talk about it. Talk me through what it is.
Sure. So, well, it's a lot of things, but mainly it's a long-term athletic development program aimed at aspiring junior golfers, collegiate golfers, and let's say mm, aspiring professionals. I would say
Yeah.
90% of the program was aimed at elite juniors and competitive juniors, kids that want to play college golf or think that they want to play college golf. I do have a few college players in the program. They're a little more low maintenance because they've already been developed. And then one professional player, which I try to keep that to one because any more than one with the responsibilities I have with the program would be too much. So basically, the program is this holistic approach. It's everything that I saw in Tony's camps. Uh, it's everything that I've wanted and learned from different national organizations like in Australia, Canada, Sweden. There's so many programs around the world that have had this long-term athletic mindset, and I've always admired that. Luckily now the PGA of America's kind of caught on, and we have our athletic development model, but really what I try to do is surround these kids with experts in each part of the game. So I guess probably the best way to start is just to tell you how you can kind of get involved in the program, and then I'll go from there. So anybody that wants to be a part of my program, that we do require an initial evaluation. And the reason that we do that is because it's a two-way street. We've got I want to spend 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years with these players or longer. And we want to make sure that from the get-go, they understand kind of like our ethos and our, kind of how we do things. But we also want them to see, what a trip or the coaching could be like. But we're also evaluating them and their parents. And so they come spend a couple of days with us. Now we run them through the gamut. I mean, it's pretty intense. We do evaluations within putting, short game. They'll have basically some office hours with Dr. Morris Pickens, who's our mental performance coach. They'll spend time with me both on the course, and if I had to do it perfectly, I would do on the course first before I get them in the bay or any sort of kind of static environment. And then I'll get them onto our 3D motion capture system, force plates, TrackMan. I mean, I'll run them through this long gamut of tests and kind of getting a baseline and a blueprint of who they are, at least on that day or that time. And then that gives me a really good snapshot of maybe, of course, we're collecting a history of where they came from, but it kind of helps me see what we could do long-term with them. And, I think a lot of people will, at least from my standpoint, when they come in, they're expecting lots of instruction. But really, at the core of it, the evaluation is less instruction and more data collection and really trying to come up with a blueprint of what the instruction should look like going forward. Of course, not everybody is invited to join the program for various reasons. So each player, no matter whether they're invited to come back and join us full time or not, we'll leave with a comprehensive plan for, say, 4 to 6 weeks. Like, this is what you should be doing over the next, month or so, right? So we're just, and the cool thing about the program that we have here, I think, is the fact that it's all under one roof when they get here. Lots of players have teams, and I think for the most part that's a good thing. But I think having your team in one spot and be able to kind of practice all of those different segments of the game under one roof and having our eyes on them, and the communication within the team is really important. So really, because it's a national program, I don't have any local clients. People are coming from all over the country. They'll come 4, 6, maybe 8 times a year max. I mean, that'd be a lot. 4 to 6 is kind of the sweet spot. It's the coaching in between that's really important. So we have communication platforms set up. I use Coach Now as kind of my main platform for communication. That's where we would house all of their notes, data, all the things that we capture, practice plans. That's where they would communicate video back and forth to the coaching team. And then we use Clipped, which is a stats program. And that's very important to drive the performance forward throughout the year. Of course, we're trying to periodize that throughout the year, like we're in the winter here in the States. So that practice plan or that winter plan is going to look a little bit different than in the summer. But the stats help drive that. And we're really just trying to touch all the bases that we can. And I do a lot of webinars. So I'll probably try to do 8 to 10 webinars, and I'll get different people on. I've had Scott Fawcett from Decade, and we do use some of that. I've had, and this is all just directed just at my students. So it'd be like, similar to how we're having this conversation, just, directed to my players only. And then NeuroPeak Pro, I'm having on Thursday, a guy named Andy Matthews, who's going to help my players learn how to breathe better to control their emotions and their stress on the course. So I'm just, if I don't have it here under this roof, I'm going to try to find it. Really, it usually stems from one player will need something, and then I'll just say, okay, well, let's just show it to everybody, right?
Yeah.
And, it's a lot. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, and it can seem overwhelming at times. But me and my assistant try to keep it as simple as we can. But there's just so much fluidity when these players are growing through the different stages, and everybody needs a little bit of different things at different times, and we're just trying to provide those avenues best we can.
We're welcoming a new partner to the Your Golf Performance podcast. This will be a performance analytics partner, Circles, or Draw More Circles as you may know them, the ultimate tool for tracking your golf progress. Whether you're a junior golfer, college player or coach, the everyday club golfer, or a golf professional, Draw More Circles allows you to easily track and analyze your performance like never before. With their innovative performance analytics, you'll get insights into your game that go far beyond just the scorecard. From strokes gain metrics to detailed reports on every aspect of your play, you can pinpoint exactly where to focus your practice to improve faster. One of the best features that I've found with Circles is the course management tool, which will take your physical data to help you navigate around the course smarter. They're actually taking your stats that you've entered into the system and helping you strategically play a better game of golf. Plus, it's perfect for coaches who want to keep track of their players' development and offer data-driven advice. If you can't measure it, you're guessing. The best part is that as you are one of my listeners, you'll get exclusive access to their services through our partnership. These prices are too hot to mention, and I'll need you to email me. My email address is brentdalegolf@gmail.com, or feel free to message me on Instagram at brentdalegolf. We welcome Circles to the team. When you say they only could have come and visit 4 to 8 times per year, is that like when they come, it's kind of like an intense,
It's
8 hours
two.
a day type thing, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's some breaks in there, but yes,
Yeah,
largely it's 8 to 5, and yeah, there's some breaks in there, and but yeah, it's intense because we're basically what we're doing. I'll take full swing, as a prime example because that's my main responsibility. So just so everybody knows, my responsibility within the program is tournament scheduling, tournament observation, practice planning, blueprinting for the whole year, full swing, statistics, college recruiting. I wear a lot of hats.
yeah,
And then the rest of the team does what they're specialized in. So my putting coach just focuses on putting. And I think one of the unique things when you have a team is that, although I could probably teach, lots of players putting, I think it's nice to have somebody that as a consultant on the team that, that's all they're thinking about all the time is putting. And same thing with short game or Dr. Mo with mental or our fitness team. Right. So we're trying to push the program through. So from a full swing standpoint, let's say they started January 1st and we went through a gears evaluation and I gave them their one or two things that they want to work on. We're monitoring that through about a quarter, right? So for the next 3 months and adjusting as we need to. And then they come back in and we remeasure and then start either the next phase of that, whatever that could be based on the time of year. Like, if they come in January, what I'm really trying to do is get them ready for April to start having the mindset to go from more technical to more performance based. And then the plan kind of shifts as the tournament schedule and the tournament year shifts. So it's a moving target, but it's a lot of fun.
So with your initial assessments when they come in and you decide whether they can come into the program, is there, and I know it's hard when they're kids and they're young and they're not fully developed, but like, is there any personality profiling either for the kid or the parent? Because is there going to be a kid that comes into the program that, everyone can fake it for a day or two when they're in, and then 6 months into the program, they're an absolute nightmare because they don't want to do this or they push back. Is there anything on that end that you guys try to do early on?
So that is why so there's only 2 times that the parent is required to be a part of the initial evaluation. Um, They need to be here when at the very end, when I'll do my debrief, and we'll kind of, get you tell them what the program will look like, or we'll give them, kind of their plan for the next couple months. And the other one is they spend about an hour with Dr. Mo. Dr. Mo is my profiler, so
Yeah,
he
okay.
helps me to kind of like weed them out a little bit. We have been fooled. People, like you said, they can kind of be on their best behavior and like that. But Dr. Mo is such a great resource, which is why I think it's so important to have different people on your team with different strengths.
Yeah, okay. And ideally, like obviously, this is if you're doing this program, you're pretty serious and want to be the best golfer you can be, probably the best golfer in the world. Um, how many hours a week are these kids dedicating to their practice, like outside of when they're with you guys?
Well, that's a great question. So, I think balance is so important in these kids' lives. So, I'll give you an example. All of my kids will have different schedules and different structures. I have kids that are in virtual school. I don't know if that's something
Yeah,
that's available
it's
where you guys
becoming
are, but
popular here now.
yeah, it's very popular here as well. So I have kids that are in virtual school. They have all day long to do what they want, uh, right or wrong. And then I have kids in regular private school, public school that get out of school at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock or 3:30. So the time commitment is going to vary from player to player. But what I would always try to get across to these kids is, balance is important. Having things that they are interested in outside of golf is healthy, and um, you know, I just see burnout far too often, and it's important to me the way that I structure their practice plan. If they're a homeschooled or a virtual school person, I will build in different breaks, and basically they'll have. We'll take a full swing again as an example. They'll have their technical work that they're going to do, their kind of training plan. This might be mirror work or practice uh, in a mirror, practicing with training aids, different sort of foundational things that are important to them. And then once they feel comfortable with that, they'll move on to the next phase of practice for that day, which would be more ball control. So they're going to be trying to, of course, do the things that they need to do in their golf swing from a mechanical standpoint, but they're really evaluating, is the ball going the right distance? Is it the right height? Is it starting on line? Is it shaping how I want it? Is the spin control there? All of the ball control things that are important in a block practice kind of environment. And then if that's going well, I'll have them move into more of a performance plan where they're going to be working on their routines, working on shaping shots, different targets, different clubs, more random practice with a little bit more intent. If that's going well, they're done. They don't need to start over, because what ends up happening is a lot of these kids who just stay in that block practice mindset or practice for too many hours is they'll always find something wrong with something, right? And they start to go down a rabbit hole that they don't need to go down to. And you can work your way from a good practice session into a poor practice session pretty quickly with that sort of lack of structure. So I try to be really specific with the amount of time that they're doing, whatever time they have. I've helped with their guidance, of course, of what their other responsibilities are or what their lifestyle is. And I try to stick to Monday through Friday. Saturday and Sunday is too chaotic. There's tournaments and family stuff. So here's what you're going to do Monday through Friday. And then Saturday and Sunday, of course, I'll help them with whatever they need. But really just, I think, having a plan and being able to get whatever you can out of the day without overdoing it is just super important.
So this question I try to ask a lot of the guests that are on here. You having been around some high level players, and obviously where you coach a lot of the tour players, I can see those lovely bags behind you with all the
Sure.
tour players that are there. What have you learnt with the guys that can go out and consistently win events, and then there's guys that are struggling to and it could be at any level, junior, college, pro. There's people that struggle to keep their card. So, like for reference, why is there a guy like Rory McIlroy or a Scotty Scheffler who can go out and be a legitimate chance of winning every single time they tee it up, and then there's other people that pretty much have a very, very similar skill set and they struggle to make cuts?
Well, that's a good question. So I think if you take Rory is probably an outlier among outliers,
Yeah.
but I would say for the majority of the kind of top guys, they're really keen and aware of what's important to them, and
Yeah.
they don't really stray from the plan. And so they have these foundational things that they're really consistent with day to day. Because as you know, things change day to day. How you feel, especially as you get older. Some of our tour players that I've seen have the most consistent. I mean, I'll take Harris English as an example, just because I get to see the work that him and Justin are doing on kind of a weekly basis. He's really honed in on being consistent with his grip every day, being consistent with the little things every day, ball position, distance from the ball, body lines, all of these foundational things. Because if those foundational things get off, then maybe the backswing will get a little bit off, and if that starts to stray, then transition, that sequence can get off, and when that happens, his release pattern changes, and then the ball goes and starts in a different direction, or maybe curves in an opposite way that he's looking for. So it always goes down, I think, to those top level players, to those foundational things, understanding what that is for them. And I think as our job as coaches is to try to have that plan and have those foundational things in place for those players, so that they know what they are and they can work on them each day. But um, you know, I, I recently found out, because you mentioned Scotty, the detail that he puts into that molded grip. So, I think it's becoming more popularized as he's continued to win. But I would say that, I found out recently the care that they take in just building that club is quite intensive. So, of course, this would only happen for a player of Scotty's caliber, but when they're redoing that club, they're usually redoing most of his set. He goes through that training club 2 or 3 times a year, and they bring the tour truck there to Royal Oaks, where Randy Smith is, and with his coach, and they'll go through, of course, his normal bag. But the care that they put into putting that grip on the training club, where the tour fitter will place it on there. Randy's there, his caddy's there, Scotty's there, and they all pass it around. And Scotty will put it in his hands. Randy will make little tweaks, and it's just that attention to detail on the little things that I think, from a consistency standpoint, is really important. Because if you want to be consistent, you have to do kind of things consistently. And with such a chaotic, variable sport, that's really difficult to do, and you just have to control what you can control.
Yeah. Are there common patterns that you see amongst talented players who fail to reach their potential?
Distractions. Uh, yeah, I would say
You feel it's getting worse and worse with social media and all that sort of stuff now, and
yes.
phones?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think with social media, YouTube, um, there's a lot of great information out there. But when you have a player who's going through either a plateau, or maybe they're going on a downtrend, it's almost too easy for them to start to scroll on their phones and find different information that may be good for some, but not so good for others. I think it's really important that those players kind of double down on their foundational things, the things that they know have worked for them in the past. And honestly, I think one of the hardest things to do when those players get distracted like that is to show up each day with a good attitude, because
Mm.
it's you have to really dig deep in those moments, and doubling down on your strengths and trying to get back to the basics, and not kind of filling your head with too much information, I think is, although hard to do, very important in when you're in one of those trends.
So, strength and fitness is obviously a big part of your program.
Yeah, strength and fitness is a huge part of our program. We're lucky enough to have Randy Myers and Tom Hemmings. Uh, Randy's um, Randy's one of the godfathers of golf fitness. He was there at the kind of the onset for the Titleist Performance Institute, and a very integral player in terms of that program. And Tom Hemmings works with most of our tour players now. Of course, Randy works with many of them, like Brian Harmon and others. But um, Tom has just a wealth of knowledge, and he kind of comes at it from a couple different. He has a TPI background, but he has a few other backgrounds, and that's been really invaluable. I would say when a player comes in and they do our initial evaluation, almost never is somebody coming in with a really great physical foundation who maybe didn't play other sports.
Yeah.
Most of the players that come in that have played other sports will have a great foundation or base, but people are specializing at such a young age now. It's not really their fault, because maybe they haven't had any guidance on the physical fitness part. But Tom and Randy are extremely important in the program. And when they come to the evaluation, I usually say, like, if you don't do anything else, like if you leave here and you do nothing else that nobody else says, you have to do what Tom said, or you have to do what Randy said,
Yeah.
because those are the things that are really going to make the changes I want to make stick. They're going to help putting posture. They're going to help cardio, just being able to play lots of tournaments. Or I have some very high speed players, as Tom likes to call them, kind of car crashes waiting to happen. I have many kids that swing it well over 125 miles an hour. I had a kid get to almost 140 a few months ago, and at their age, of course, they're not going to feel too much. They're very free in how they train, right? They're just like, I'm fast, I'm fit, I don't have to work at anything. And what we found was, actually, that kid that got to 140, when he came in for his evaluation, he was swinging about 129, 130, which is
Is that
very
with a
fast.
driver or is that with a speed stick?
No, that's with a driver.
Wow. Wow.
And came from a multiple sport background, big kid, strong kid. He lacked deficiency in balance and stabilization. A lot of the things in the core, the fascia, many of those things were weak. And I gave him the same thing, like, hey, man, this is really important that you stick to this, because I don't want you to get injured with how fast you are. He comes back 3 months later. He's hammered his plan. I mean, he's just done above and beyond. Tom told him to do 3 days. I think he was doing 5 days plus all of his daily movement prep. And when he showed back up, he was swinging closer to 140 miles an hour. And I texted Tom on the spot and I said, hey, man, thank you, but this is now too much speed.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where it was like he had things that were unlocked just from doing, core exercises and maintenance, corrective exercises that he didn't even know he had. It was a lot more stable and efficient, but it was almost too fast. So there's a lot of benefits to the fitness, and they're just we're all a big part of the team, but they're a huge cornerstone for sure.
Hey, listeners, I just wanted to give a big shout out to one of our amazing partners, True Protein. They've been with me for a while now, and honestly, I can't speak highly enough about them. For years, I struggled to find a protein powder that didn't make me feel sick. Most brands would often make my stomach feel upset, and I'd just truly given up. But ever since I started using True Protein, it's completely changed. Their products make me feel great. I've never had that heavy or queasy feeling I used to get with the other brands. I'm absolutely obsessed with the choc peanut butter flavor that I've been putting in my protein shakes with a banana and some ice and some almond milk. Absolute game changer. It's become my pretty much everyday go-to. And also the other thing that I'm sort of having probably too often is their collagen hot chocolate. Every morning, I just mix it in with some hot water, and it's like 12 grams of protein for about 80 calories. So you can't go wrong. Plus, their protein bars are perfect for snacking on the course or during lessons. They keep me fueled without the crash. True Protein is an Aussie-made brand that uses clean, high-quality ingredients with no weird fillers or artificial junk. That's a huge deal for me, because those fake sweeteners is what I've always struggled with, and they'd all set me off. So with our partnership, you can get a $25 off your first order as a new customer. Just use the code TRUEYGP at checkout. That's TRUEYGP. I'm proud to partner with True Protein because they've genuinely made a difference for me, and I know they'll do the same for you. Would a lot of these kids that have coming or are coming into your program, so I know the world's changed a lot, where a lot of parents now pull their kids from every sport and go just focus on one. When I was a kid, it was multiple sport, and a lot of PGA Tour players you hear are multiple sports. Obviously, there's a lot of Asian backgrounds now where it's just from 7 years old. I'm seeing kids rock up with GC quads and using it for their chipping, like before a tournament type thing. And it's all in on golf. Are you finding the kids in your program that are fast are all playing, excuse me, are all playing multiple sports as a youngster? And what age are they starting to taper away and just hone in on golf?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's getting earlier and earlier. I would say, let's say, of my 10 fastest kids, probably 7 of them did play sports up until 15 or 16. Um, I'd say maybe my third or fourth fastest player got into specialized golf really late. He was a baseball player. But I do have kids that are just specialized in golf, but they've tried to hit it hard for years, and they've trained speed the easiest way that you can, which is literally just swinging it faster
Hmm.
every single day and training speed that way. So I think the safer way is probably with training in all the different planes of motion that sports inherently helps us to do. So somebody that's specialized in golf who's fast, that fitness aspect would be almost more important.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that with the advent of the stack system and different things like that, there's almost I'm seeing kids be fast from all different backgrounds, which is unique, and they all, like you said, they all have a lot of. I think that's the feedback that can push that too. I didn't know that my swing speed was fast when I was a youngster,
Hmm.
but they can track it now, right? And they have devices. I
Yeah.
mean, there's $100 devices out there that are pretty accurate at just clubhead speed.
Yep.
um, that motivates them to continue to push speed. So I'd say, more often than not, the kids that train to different sports probably are faster, but I don't think that it's necessarily just those.
Yeah. How much emphasis do you place on the mental game, and sort of what mental traits do you think matter the most for competitive success?
Yeah. So the mental game is extremely important. Um, and the traits that I think matter most for competitive success are something that I preach to my players all the time. So there's these psychological characteristics of developing excellence that we try to adhere to here at the program, and those at the base level are commitment, coping with pressure, focus and distraction control, goal setting, imagery or visualization, planning and organizational skills, and then having realistic performance evaluations and self awareness. So those would be the traits that I think matter most for competitive success. Um, a lot of people will have maybe some differing opinions or some other ones, but those are the ones that I found to be the most important for the kids that are really successful in competitive environment. And then what they're good at for the focus and distraction control behaviors, they're really good at blocking out distractions. They display consistent pre-performance routines. They maintain a focus on appropriate cues during the competition. So they have mental cues that they'll go through as they're competing that are really important. And then they show an understanding of kind of when distraction is happening, how to stay calm under pressure. So those are the things that I think come inherent to some and not so much to others, and that we try to train those with the help of Dr. Mo as much as we can.
What about the kids where nothing's ever good enough? And
The
it's,
perfectionist.
yeah, you know what? A couple of years back, I started to realize not even perfectionism. It's like also the kid that hits a shot, and let's just say we're 150 out and it goes to 35, 40 feet, and they're throwing the club up in the air and they've got the shits and this is terrible and this is bad. I think deep down they're trying to show their playing partners, oh, I'm actually better than this, but that was a
Sure.
bad shot and I'm not happy with it. And it makes them feel a little bit more secure about their ability. Like, do you come across that often?
All the time. I mean, one of the things that I will say, if a player comes off of a tournament and they said, I should have shot lower today. I shot 73, but it really should have been a 68. Well, that usually comes down to um, strategy, mindset, or they're just not as good as they think they are.
Hmm.
Right. And I don't think it's really anything other than those three things. And those kids that are trying to show that they how much they care by throwing tantrums, that's That's a tough one, and it's something that I do see all the time. But I think you just have to, one, it's a maturation process. But I think it's our job as coaches to kind of help them through those and understand that what good really looks like is really important. So sometimes it can just be as kids that are really into the game, especially boys. I'd say boys more so than girls watch a lot of golf, or are at least in tune with what the highlights were for that week or who won, and they're seeing kind of the best shots every tournament every week. And TV's of course not showing. I wish they would. The guys who are struggling to make the cut. I
Yeah.
think that's a compelling
Should be
story.
another challenge, another channel for that.
It should, yeah, like ESPN the cut. That'd be
Yeah.
awesome, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I think they see this highlight reel and that comparison of not only other players or professional players, but they compare their every shot with the best shot they've ever hit, right? And they have this
Mm.
kind of unrealistic expectations of what they're actually capable of doing, or they just need maybe a little guidance of what good actually is in terms of proximity or different distance uh, parameters based on age. Kids are going to develop at different times. So it's tough, man. I mean, it really is. Coaching kids is not for the faint of heart, but
You know,
they keep
you,
us on our toes.
something just sparked in my head there. I've got a young girl that comes to my program, and she's a good player. She's 10 years old. She's probably a 15 handicap, right? Which I think is phenomenal for a 10-year-old to be able to 10-year-old girl to be able to play off a 15 handicap, right? Um, Now there are other girls around the world that they'd be off scratch or whatever, right? But her mum was starting to worry a little bit, and I apologize if she's going to listen to this, but she was starting to worry, like, oh, I don't think she hits it far enough for a 10-year-old, or she doesn't do this or do that. How would you compare? And you might not have the answer to this, right? But 10-year-olds are, some are tall, some are short, some are skinny, some are heavy. Is there a standardized chart that you would look at and go, I went to ChatGPT during the lesson and said, hey, she hits her 7-iron 100 and whatever it was, 115 meters. So what's that, like 130 yards or something like that? And ChatGPT wrote back and said, that's amazing for a 10-year-old girl, right? But is there anything that you draw on to show them and go, hey, you're doing pretty good?
Well, sure. I mean, I think you have to have. Um, I mean, I can answer that a couple of
I
different
know it's
ways.
a hard question to ask, right?
It
But
is. It is. So, to me, there's let's take a 12-year-old or a 10-year. I think 10, probably a lot of 10-year-olds are kind of the same. But we'll take 10 to 12 as a kind of a age range. As you said, the biological age of the human being is not their developmental age,
hmm,
right? It's not their sports age. I mean, I have, as an example, just in my own program, I will advertise as like 13 is kind of the benchmark to get into my elite program. It's not the benchmark, but it's the lowest age that I would let in.
yeah,
Um, but that is very. I have two kids that are 13 that are in my program, and they're also very small physically, but their golf IQ, their demeanor, their human skills they're so far ahead of they are so far ahead of some of my 14, 15, 16-year olds in
hmm,
terms of the mental side of the game. It was easy for me to let them in.
yeah,
I have 13 and 14-year olds that are 3 to 6 inches taller, and they hit it a lot farther, but they're not ready for the type of coaching that we have in our elite program versus our advanced program. So everybody's a little bit different. I would say, Operation 36. I don't know if you're familiar with that
yeah.
at
I've heard
all.
of it. Yeah,
So they at one point tried to basically chart that out. And maybe this would be a better question for Ryan Daly or Matt Reagan, who headed up um, that program. But basically, they basically try to say if you're 6 and you can shoot par from this age, or from this distance,
yep,
you're on track to play in college golf.
yeah. Okay.
right? And they based on the data that they had, that tool when I was running that program was very powerful for the kid that was stuck at Division 3 100 yards at 8 years old. And I'm like, buddy, look at this chart right here. Like you're on track to play D1 golf. You're just not big enough to get it close enough to the hole yet. So I still think golf is just such, everybody's so a unique individual. You have to figure out how to coach them through those moments
Mm,
as best you can. But no, there's really no. I wish there was a chart, like that'd make our job a lot easier. But I think
yeah.
you just have to find, um, you know, trends in their stats that can point towards competence in certain skills, and players need to figure out how to beat other players with what they're good at. I mean, one of the things that happens to our tour players all the time, especially the guys that are Corn Ferry who graduate to the tour, and all of a sudden they're standing next to Rory and they're standing next to Scotty, and it's like, well, that guy chips it way better than me, and that guy's 4-iron goes 30 feet higher, and he hits it 30 yards farther, and it's like, okay, well, what are the things that got you to the tour? Because you
Mm,
probably need to triple down on those, not try to improve your weaknesses that are pointed out and very glaring based on the top 10 players in the world. So, I think it's that comparison of, what's the saying? Comparison is the thief of joy.
yeah.
I think that's a really dangerous thing. And you need to learn how to beat. If you're a junior listening to this and somebody's hitting it farther than you need to figure out how to beat them with your game.
Mm, I love it. I've always said to the little kids, just get really, really good at chipping and putting. And then when your length comes, that's when you're going to have an advantage over the guys that have been able to hit it way further than you, but they've got a terrible short game. Because there are some
Well,
kids in junior golf that hit it 50 meters further than other kids, and that's their advantage. And then they get caught up to it 13, 14, 15, and it's roles reverse.
Well, and we had talked about this a little bit earlier when you mentioned like, um, okay, so let's say, how does a player avoid? I would say PJ Tour players or really great players are adverse to high scores. They've figured out a way to not make a big number. They're excellent chippers. They're excellent putters. They are good. They make good decisions. They have a functional tee ball. They might not hit it in every fairway, but it's not going out of bounds. They figured out a way to score. I mean, Harris is a good example, even before he worked with Justin, of being able to show up with a good attitude and figure out how to make a score on the day with what he had. And
Yeah.
then the work they've done has obviously elevated his game quite a bit. But I would say, trying to make your game as bulletproof to high scores as you can with whatever you think that needs to be. But it usually is rooted in like a really, really good short game. Like the worst putter on tour, the worst putter at Sea Island is the best putter at your local club or anywhere
Yeah.
else. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Just while we were on that mental stuff, like what's probably the biggest mental mistakes you see young players make under pressure? So it doesn't really happen in practice, but then they go and play a tournament and you see, because you'd be watching them a bit.
Yep. Yep. So I think one of the things that I see in tournaments, like I said, one of my roles is to try to observe one player, one tournament each year. So that's quite a bit of travel. So it helps when I can get 4 or 5 of them in the same tournament. But when the mistake I see is not having a plan when golf punches you in the face.
Hmm.
So they've hit a drive that they thought carried that bunker, and they walk up there and it's plugged in the face. The plan is real simple. At the root cause, you have to have some sort of plan when adversity comes. The ones that I see struggle in those situations, they just move really fast through their plan. There's no, I would say like stop, take a breath, right? Assess the situation, make a good decision. That's a plan. Showing up and freaking out and going too fast through your routine, not having a plan for in those adverse situations, those are the things that I think separate. They're separating skills in all parts of the game, but from an on-course performance part, I think that's a big one. We like I mentioned before, I'm doing a webinar with Andy Matthews from NeuroPeak, which is a breathing apparatus that helps the kids, all players like Keegan Bradley, who works with Dr. Mo here at Sea Island, or he's got some other of our players using it. That's a plan. But learning how to breathe and control your breath, that's a plan. The kids that don't have plans, when golf punches them in the face, typically start to move too fast. They make bad decisions, and then they compound those mistakes hole after hole, and then they blame anything else but themselves. But the reality was they needed to have just a window where they can assess the situation and try to make a good decision the best way that they can.
Yeah.
Your golf ball is the most technologically advanced, or it's not. Your golf ball is either the most consistent, or it's not. It's the most trusted, or it's not. The fact is, it's either Titleist, the best performing golf ball in the world, or it's not. Prove it for yourself. Titleist, the #1 ball in golf. What will you play?
You got any good travel tips, i.e., could be, do this when you're on a plane, or make sure you pack this, but also like preparation for events. Like how are you educating your juniors or players to best prepare for a tournament at a course they've never played before?
That's a great question. So I've actually come up with a very lengthy document that I share with each one of my players once they're onboarded into the program. It's called my tournament action plan, but it's a step-by-step guide. It's about a 30-day long process, but you can condense that if you want. But it starts with historical scoring. So let's say you've got a tournament coming up. You need to know what good is at that event last year, the year before. What expectations should I have if I'm going to make the cut? What expectations on scoring should I have if I wanted to compete to win? What expectations should I have based on scoring? Might be it's a difficult course, or if you don't know that, you might show up thinking I'm going to go shoot 65 today, and 66 might be the course record. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I think that would start it out, and then I think each player needs to have a kind of a systematic approach to preparing for the event. There would be a really long answer to go through the whole tournament
Yeah,
action
of
plan.
course. Yeah.
I think at the basis, you want to have some idea of what the golf course is like, conditions. What style of architecture is it? Is it Donald Ross greens? That'll give you an idea of what to practice in the days or weeks leading up to the event for your travel. And I think that preparation really shows through in the performance when they show up and they feel a little bit more prepared, especially if, when's the last time that a player shows up each week with their A game? I think it's happened, a handful. It's Scotty now and Tiger then, but
Yeah.
when they have I would say Scotty would probably even agree with me on this, that when he's competing in a 4-day event, he probably has one day with his A game, one day that's average, and then 2 days that he would consider were like not very good. But he still finds a way to win because
Yeah, they manage it.
Yeah, they manage it so well. And so I try to teach all of my players kind of a systematic approach to help them with that. They'll go through some sort of a full health check of their game in the weeks leading up so that they know what to practice. We'll go through statistics for them that are important for when they play well. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses, and I think too many players are focused on trying to improve all of their weaknesses, and that ends up leading to some bad scores from time to time because they let their strengths slide a little bit. But and then just showing up to the practice round with an approach. Everybody's a little bit different. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want anybody to go out there and do something that they wouldn't feel comfortable with. A lot of kids just like to play practice rounds for score. I personally don't agree with that approach because it sets expectations, good or bad. If they play bad, their expectation is it's going to be a bad tournament. If they play good, their expectation is I'm going to win. When they really need to be going out and figuring out the conditions of the course, sight lines, all the things that a professional would want to do, we try to instill in them as best we can. And then I would try to pick a hotel that has a gym, right? I think that's important.
Yeah.
So you stick to your daily movements. Try to figure out how long. I mean, here's an exercise that I would want any parent listening out there to try. This will give your kid very good perspective. Have them plan the logistics of their next tournament. where you're staying, where you're going to eat, when you're going to get there, how long you're going to take when you're there for practice. Like, have them do every single step. One, they'll have more of an appreciation of what the parents do for them. But two, I think it'll open their eyes to all the things that are kind of given to them on a kind of a weekly basis. Hopefully that answered your question.
I love that. I'm going to write that down about getting getting the kids to plan out. So there's two parts to this next question. First part is, like, how do you coach juniors who sort of lack that intrinsic motivation, or rely too heavily on external support?
Oh, that's such a good question, and one that I'm really passionate about. So, I think players that seemingly don't have that intrinsic motivation, they aren't inherently lazy. They're just unclear or overwhelmed. They might be disconnected at some level, or they're just way too externally driven, right? So I think our job as a coach is not necessarily to inspire them, but it's to kind of engineer an environment where intrinsic motivation becomes like a natural byproduct of clarity, competency, and ownership of their own game. So you need to diagnose kind of the missing motivation. So maybe it's a lack of vision, of kind of a plan of where they see themselves going. And that can definitely stifle a kid's want to go practice if they don't have a clear vision of who they're trying to be. So you can build, I've had success building like a 2-year or a year-long vision board. This is where I want to be. How can I get there? Who do I want to become? Sometimes it's just a lack of competence. So I would say you would want to highlight trends in stats, break things down into achievable wins. I would also say a lot of times that intrinsic motivation can be stifled by too much pressure from parents, too much pressure from coaches, and trying to let them design their own practice can be a good exercise. So they'll using reflective questions instead of directives, making training rewarding now instead of later, gamify that and increase, flow state opportunities with proper challenge points. Building that quick competency is really important. And then really trying to move the coach or the parent from kind of a coach driven environment to a player owned environment. So saying something like, "Hey, Johnny, like, what's your number one goal this month?" Right? Like, how do you want to train that? Those are the types of things that are going to build autonomy and that internal accountability inside of a player, and really try to remove any friction that they have with the practice or with their practice plan as much as you can. I would say for the parents, when you're trying to coach the parents, is trying to remove comparisons. I hear that a lot when I'm out watching players compete is, well, Johnny did this or Susie did that.
Yeah.
Why'd you hit it over there? Everybody else hit it over here. And that is not a really good narrative. Or on the flip side of that, micromanaging, I see quite often from parents, but also like overpraising outcomes where they only like me when I play well is a narrative that I see far too often in junior golf.
Yeah.
So really, for the parents out there, like, your job is to like love, hug, feed, water, drive, support. Then like leave all the coaching to me or Brent.
Yeah.
I love that question though, because that is just so important to their development. And there are some kids that they want it, man. They chew their left arm off,
they have to own it.
They have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have to.
Gavin Sutherland will love to hear that answer. Now, you're dealing from an outsider looking in, you'd be dealing with the top 1% of the 1%, right? As far as financial position to be able to afford this program. Do you ever see players that have been given everything by their parents struggle with work ethic or motivation, or are you weeding that out with your, interview process?
Well, I can't necessarily weed it out with the interview process, but I do have a system in place within my program. I think those kids don't have a lot of consequences in their life, right? There's just not a lot of consequences. So Basically, the way it would work with us here is we're going to onboard you into the program. We're going to say, okay, this is the things that we are expected of you. Here's the things that you should expect from us. Accountability is a two-way street. And then we're going to give them, again, this is a long-term relationship. This is something that I want to have them in for a year, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. So I give them some wiggle room in the first quarter. It's a lot to go from maybe one coach to having 7 coaches, right? There's a lot that goes on to that. There's accountability within my program. Every month they're going to get a prompt from me and Coach Now this is the coach's update. Send us these videos. Tell us what you've been doing. Like, these are real specific to how they're training mentally, how they're training physically, how they're training on the course, types of practice. We want all that because it is a remote situation. So I'll give them some leniency on that for about a quarter. At the end of that first quarter, it's basically like, okay, I just want you to know, little Johnny, you need to be doing more in terms of communication, more in terms of your accountability. We're not getting enough stats from you when you're playing in tournaments. You've missed a lot of the webinars that we've hosted. You haven't been doing these things. And I just want you to know that we need you to kind of get on that a little bit. If that continues to happen, at the end of the second quarter, I will bring the parents in. I will let them know that I've had that conversation with them 3 months ago, and they had every opportunity to remedy that over the next 3 months. So now we're 6 months in, and it's like, okay, we have 6 months less, because it's a year-long commitment for me at a minimum. Everybody signs a contract for 1 year minimum. And so you've got 6 months left at minimum. We're hoping for more, of course, but we really need to see them turn that around. At the end of the third quarter, I'll have a meeting regardless. It's either good news or bad news, basically. And then we're either planning for the next year, or we're having a conversation and we're basically saying, like, you've paid for these next 3 months of time. Come down here. We're going to continue to coach them as hard as we've been coaching them. But at the end of this year we're kind of, we're going to let them go out of the program so I can bring somebody else in who's on a wait list. I do have a pretty extensive wait list, so I'll bring somebody else in who really wants to be a part of this program. And being upfront that those consequences do exist, I think, is really important, because, as you said, a lot of these young men and women who've been given everything, that's not a fault of their own, but I think that instilling the consequences is really important to my program at the very least.
How do you go working through plateaus? Because obviously kids think that the improvement cycle is just on this massive upward spiral, but there is ups and downs. How do you go with plateaus and I guess helping them through it?
Yeah, I think, it's our job as coaches to, of course, we're going to have a plan in place. There's going to be golf is chaotic, right? So there's going to be these ups and downs. And I think just explaining that to them is of course important. But, when somebody's in a plateau, the year that I've designed is usually periodized enough where it'll change shape or form as they're moving through the year. So hopefully if they're in a plateau, the next phase of the plan will kind of kick them out of that mentally or physically. So a kid that's just been beaten down by tournaments for the last 4 months or 5 months, he knows that he's about to have, I basically make most of my kids take, winter off from competitive tournaments, because there's no off season in junior golf. I mean, there's no off season in professional golf either.
Yeah.
So trying to build that in that periodization, I think, is really important. And then just really trying to get them back on their foundation, man. I mean, I know I've said that a few times already, but the things that are important to them, their baselines, their foundations, typically when they're plateauing, either they're not paying attention to those, and that's leading to some other things getting off, or maybe there's a lack of communication or lack of understanding, I should say, of what they should be doing. But I think, you have to, I mean, I think college recruiting is probably a good example for this. So sometimes you just got to get the juices flowing again, right? So, we'll have a lot of kids on June. So in the United States, June 15th of their sophomore summer is a really important date because that's when college coaches can officially start to reach out to them, and they're always expecting um, a lot on that day, and that's usually not the way it goes. For some, it will be. And as they're playing through that summer, a lot of times the pressures of that they can start to plateau, and from a performance standpoint, and then they have expectations layered on top of that, and then the schools that they thought they were going to play for, maybe that they start to go away. And what I try to do is, at the very least, is get a conversation going with another school. So, hey, reach out to this set of schools, and then even if it's not where they want to go, just having somebody be like, "Hey, thanks so much for your email. We're really interested in you," and that gets them going.
Yeah.
And then that spark.
It pumps
You
them
just have
up.
pumps them up. You got to find little things to spark. And sometimes that can be in stats, and sometimes it can just be, okay, I'll get with Tom and I'll say, okay, let's just can we just get them on more of a strength training program if that's appropriate, just to change something up, even if it's just for a month. I mean, you just have to take it player by player, I think, but it's a difficult thing. But I think usually coaching them through that plateaus is the fun part.
Yeah. Okay. You got time for a couple more?
Oh yeah, I'm good to go.
All right. What do you wish more juniors understood about what it takes to actually become a top level player? And is it when they come in and they're around those PGA Tour players or Corn Ferry that are there, is that giving them a better understanding of oh, holy cow, these guys work hard?
Okay, so I will take a recent yes, 100% yes, but I would say I'm always trying to give kids an eye on what the one step above is, and we're very lucky here. So for a junior in high school, I also work with a lot of college players, so I'll try to surround them with the college players, so they can see what that one step above is. And for my college players, I might send them out to play with our access members or somebody on the Asian tour, a mini tour player. That's one step above. Most of the guys that are in college that I teach are not in the top 25 in the PJ Tour accelerated program, right?
Yeah.
So that they're probably not going to get a card right out of college. They're going to have to go through that Q school process. So I'll put them with people in that environment. Or then the guys that are maybe on the Corn Ferry Tour, they love playing with Patton and Harris and Brian and Keith and all these guys. And I think that's a really good thing. So from a junior golf standpoint, what I've really tried to do the best, and I could not say more about this young man, but for anybody in your part of the world that doesn't know about him, I'm sure you will. His name's Blades Brown. Blades Brown is 18 years old. He turned professional. He works with our team here. Not me. I'm not part of his team, but he works with a lot of the coaches here at Sea Island, Justin Parsons in particular. And then he does some consulting with Tom, and Tom's his fitness guy. But his organization, all of the human skills are a decade ahead of almost all other 18-year-olds. So I use him as a baseline all the time, and we'll have conversations with our players. We'll say, these are the things that Blades does, and he's the same age as you, right? So you're capable of doing it, right? I know that they can do that. So it's really important.
Have you met Blades' parents?
Of course, yes.
What are they like?
They're fun. I mean, look, Blades has the best attitude in professional golf right now. And a lot of that has to do with his age. But man, when he's here, it's Disneyland. It's Candyland. I mean, he is so excited to have the opportunities that he has. His dad, I think, firm but fair, let him figure a lot of the stuff out on his own. But again, with some guidance, I would say the pressure was not there to perform in tournaments. The pressure was probably there to compete hard, prepare well. Everything else, effort over outcome, right?
Okay.
I mean, that's a cliche in our world, but it's just so true. So I think they really pushed effort over outcome, and the outcome kind of took care of itself. But yes, his dad is an absolute blast. I love him.
All right, awesome. All right, just before we go, if a really good 14-year-old turned up on your doorstep, I asked this to a lot of the coaches or caddies or whatever that I've had, and they asked for a piece of advice like, what should I be doing? I want to play on the PGA Tour. Is there some... Now, I know you've got a lot of these answers there, but What systems should they be putting in place at that age, even if they're not in your program, to be able to give themselves the best chance?
That's a great question. I don't think that there's maybe like one thing that would kind of answer or accelerate them more than others, but I'd say that it's a look. I think decade golf and the things that Scott Fawcett is doing is really good. Whether they adhere to the entire system or not, or they just watch his videos, I think he does a really good job of laying out course management and expectations and all that stuff. So I think having a keen eye for course management at a young age is really important. Being able to, what I would call, kind of smelling out the double bogeys, right? Like understanding at an early age, that pin, that's probably not one I should go at. I'm just going to kind of dump it over here into this pocket of the green and move on. That's really important. But I would also say the work that Tom and Randy do in the gym with these young people is, I would say, maybe the most important, because, although Randy would say we've put a lot of bad bodies on college golf teams, I think what he's really referring to is, in the face of whatever genetics they have, that framework that you build in the gym, it breeds confidence, consistency. If you're doing it right, it's like that working out piece, man. That's like really important. And I think, if there's not a full swing technique or a putter in the pro shop that's going to do it. I think if they can build those human skills, the gym has a really good way of doing that.
Ryan, this has been such a cool chat, and I could probably speak for another couple of hours, but it's getting late over there, and I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for coming on. How can the listeners find you?
Great question. So at Ryan Smith Golf on Instagram. I've got a website coming from my friends at Altitude Create, Ryan Smith Golf. That's going to be coming pretty shortly. I'm going to be having some things on there in terms of different, we'll call it coaching platforms and education for coaches and education for players. That'll be coming in 2026. You can, of course, just email me at ryansmith@seaisland.com or come to the beautiful state of Georgia, the Golden Isles. Sea Island is one of the most beautiful places to be. Our doors are always open. I'd love to meet any one of you.
I'm going to come hang out one day.
Come on, man. Look, we got a big building. We got lots of stuff going on every day. We'd love to have you.
All right, mate. Thank you so much again for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.